Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the SPL waiting room. I'm Agra. I'll be your host as per usual, but it's going to be a little bit different this week because with SOC going a little bit longer, we've only got about 15 minutes before the SPL is getting started up. So we got to get moving here today. We're going to cover a whole bunch of different topics, what you've seen in the SPL as of late. We talked a lot about Sanguine's big week. Last week, we'll check in with what they did. Spoiler alert, it wasn't very good. And our big question of the day that we want you guys to answer in the chat, we're seeing a lot of Nemesis being played right now. Do you feel like Nemesis is better played as an ability assassin or as an auto attack assassin? Because she's one of the few gods I think that can be played at a viable level at two different ways. We'll have MYFLIN joining us soon enough to weigh in as our resident jungler. But first, we got to catch you up on what happened last week. And for that, as per usual, we have Dave and Finch as told, or as written by Finch and Dave.
Well, welcome in for another episode of the weekly recap. This for Phase 2, Week 2 of the SPL. Finch and Dave here, obviously. We write the scripts for each other, then read them for the very first time right here and now as we give you that recap. So I'll get things started. Phase 2, Week 2 started with an undefeated matchup between Sanguine and Space Station. This set would be an interesting test of the meta, with Sanguine locking in Freya and Nemesis both games, with Space Station running an almost identical comp in both Hebo Jungle, AMC Mid, Ama Solo, Jingwei Hunter, just Raffer's picks would change. In this case, Space Station would win the Battle of the Brains as they sweep their way to a 2-0 set win and remain undefeated in the phase.
And that was the first set on Friday, and that means the second set is up to bat. That's Radiance and PK, and this one was a grind. Adapting makes his case for the best player in the world again, blocking Neath ults as Nemesis and striking fear into the hearts of men, even with a unfortunate death from Benji. Radiance clean up the set 2-0 without too much trouble. What can you tell me about Saturday, though, Finch?
Ghost up against the Renegades looked like a one-sided matchup with the potential for some close games, and that's exactly what we got. Unfortunately, my favorite genre of music, sad trombone, gets played after Game 3, and the set sort of deflates into a steamrolling by Ghost. PBM dies once, Sam dies twice, and Renegades die a whole lot, and not much more analysis can go into it. The Renegades look like an improved team with still a lot of ground to make up, and Ghost, while a bit shaken, not stirred, still stand tied for first.
Paul and Kibo competed to see who could play the better assassin on Set and Pele respectively, and 21,000 player damage from Paul in 26 minutes is a pretty strong argument. It's a 2-0 win for PK as the defending champs continue to improve. Now on to Sunday.
Radiance appears to be firing on all cylinders, which does not bode well for the rest of the league. On the other side, it was a tough draw of teams to start the phase for Sanguine, but there is still a lot of promise ahead for the first phase leaders.
Despite some early game stumbles, Dardes and Nika always seem to be able to find a little more in the tank when their team needs them most, and SSG will round out this set and this week in the SPL 2-0. But that is it for Phase 2, Week 2 of Season 7 of the SPL, as written by Finch and Dave, and then as told by Dave and Finch. It was a blast to watch, and I cannot wait to see what is in store in week number 3.
Of course, you can always watch the full version of last week's recap on the SMITEPro YouTube, but I don't know when you're going to because you're going to be locked into waiting room right now and then SPL starting right afterwards. So like I said, we got to keep it moving. MYFLIN and Hindu Man joining us on this week's episode of the waiting room. And guys, I want to start with what we asked chat right before we went to that recap video. Nemesis is seeing heavy prioritization right now. We've seen her as both an ability assassin in the past. Now she feels a little bit more auto attack. MYFLIN, where do you think Nemesis should be built right now at a pro level?
I think it's really more of a question of consistency. If you're ahead and you know you're going to be coming into the mid game with a decent, sizable lead, auto attack Nemesis is going to deal much more damage. He's going to be able to consistently deal damage to objectives and enemies. But when you go for this more ability-centric build, it gives you a little bit of leeway. If you fall behind, you're still going to get a lot of value. You're going to get your cooldowns up a lot more often. I think it really is, am I able to land my auto attacks consistently in these team fights? And in the SPL, it's very hard to do. Nemesis is an easy god to peel off of your team. So as far as consistency goes, I really do lean towards ability.
I feel like with the prevalence of Nemean Lion and upgraded Shell, though, Hindu Man, that does make it a little bit more difficult to get those auto attacks off consistently.
I think it's more to do with hybrid more than anything else. And I think the one thing that a lot of people aren't really valuing here is two different item builds are fine. You could go ability based, you can go auto attack based, but base it off the composition you're with and the composition you're against. Think of it like chins versus crit. Right, you don't necessarily see them both in the same build. You may now and again, but mainly you're looking for one or the other. You kind of choose between percent health versus crit and really bursting down the squishies. So for me, Nemesis being doubly viable means that, well, one of those builds could get nerfed in the long run, and you'd still see it get picked up because she's still viable in the other. I think she's got a lot of potency to her, but I don't think it's that much difficulty to deal with. I think there's a lot of counter picks against her. I think there's a lot of builds against her to limit her frustrations. But I also think there's a chance for Nemesis to flip-flop around on build choice.
Well, chat weighs in. They think 78% of them, at least, that auto attack is the way to go on Nemesis. I do tend to lead in your camp, though, Graham, that it's kind of comp dependent. If you have other auto attackers, should probably be going ability based so that and Shell doesn't get as much value.
That's the case.
Yeah, that's really what you got to be looking forward to. Now, Graham, as the support guy, we already touched on what MYFLIN likes to do in the jungle. There's some weird stuff happening right now at the SPL level in terms of the spirit minion and how to get the support to level 2. Now, I'm sure a lot of our viewers might not have been able to utilize this in their games. Can you break it down for them?
I don't think we're going to see it really happen in the meta, to be clear, on the average games, because it's a little bit trickier than you expect. But realistically, what it is kill the purple buff, and the support will blink, as you can see from Jake and Barracuda playing here as an example for you. You'll see Jake pull the buff, use his hog, run to lane, and he blinks immediately. You'll also notice the opposite support does the same thing. The objective here is to get that ghost minion. And if you kill that ghost minion, you'll hit level 2 quicker than the hunter in lane. Now, Guardians at level 2, and this is one of the reasons why we've seen some differences in the support role now in terms of aggressive supports here. Hitting level 2 early means you get that freeze up, and you can see Polar Bear Mike having a couple of issues just off that initial freeze. So when you think about the Guardian support selections that you see in the SPL, the Warriors coming back, some of these aggressive Guardians coming back, it's because their level 2 is very, very potent and can be used. It's not always going to be a big thing. The likes of Yamoja doesn't really get a big boost at level 2. Her level 1 clear, however, is susceptible and good enough to keep it in tow. But it is the reason for the drop-off in the early game of some of these supports that we saw previously before the mid-season change.
Yeah, the key being that you actually zone your hunter of that spirit minion XP, and that's what allows the supports to hit level 2. And I agree, I think that we will see different picks in that support role because of it. Which gods can actually abuse that level 2 power spike? Xing Chen, pretty good. Once you get Hook Slam, Horus, fantastic when it comes to kill potential. And so that's something that we'll be watching out for. In that clip, I think that you saw the Renegades execute it properly, but the opponents did not, and that's what allowed Renegades to get so much lane pressure. Just something to keep an eye on and maybe try with your friends at home, though I agree with you. I don't think we're going to be seeing that be super prevalent in ranked just because it can be a little bit difficult to execute on at times. MYFLIN, another thing that we've seen is that solo laners are starting to get ganked a little bit more. Why do you think that we're seeing these early ganks more often from junglers?
It's just about the pathing in the jungle right now. With solo laners starting off on the blue, it makes it a lot easier to path your way back over there, get your timers synced up, and getting pressure out of solo is hugely impactful, especially seeing now that Amaterasu is coming back into the meta. We've been seeing a bit of Camazotz. So you want to open up that space, give your solo laner a lead, allow them to rotate out in the early, and make their positioning advantage around the gold for you. Get some pressure in mid through your solo lane. And I think it really is that junglers right now are having a very easy time getting to level 5. Back in Season 6 or even Phase 1 of Season 7, you hit level 5 around that 5-minute mark. Nowadays, you can get there about 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes, and finding an early kill is always going to help out the squad.
No doubt about it. And so one team that has really done a good job of using their jungler pressure is Radiance. Dapting has been looking very good as of late. In fact, we actually got a chance to sit down and do one of our team check-ins with one of the hottest teams in the SPL right now.
Well, Adapting, did you pop off at all when you blocked the Neath ult the other day? I'm writing a recap on that just now, and I thought about how sick it was again. Was there any excitement there from you, or is that just normal for you?
I don't think so. I was just trying to keep him alive. I was like focused on him not dying, so I don't think I said anything. I was like, oh, you're out, nice.
And then he died top.
Cool as you like.
And then he
Or
died
do you
top.
Yeah.
that team check-in you can find in its entirety on the SMITEPro YouTube. Highly recommend checking out that series. Even if you aren't a fan of that particular team, you'll find great information on all of them for sure. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, guys, we talked a lot last week about what Sanguine was going to do with their big week. It didn't go so well. They went 0-2. They lost 2-0 to Space Station on Friday, and then 2-1 to that Radiance team on Sunday. Give me, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being your most concerned, your level of concern for Sanguine right now going into another doubleheader week for them. MYFLIN, give me your number first.
Look, I'm not concerned for Sanguine at all. I think that they had a really tough head-to-head in that first week. I mean, you're playing against two of the best teams in the league. I'd put mine at a 5. I think Sanguine is very easily still one of the top 4 teams, and I think they're going to continue to prove it as the phase goes on.
Hinduman, your number?
I'll follow about 5. I was going to say that anyway. I'm not concerned because I think the biggest thing about Sanguine that everyone needs to realize is this team came in hot off the press from the start of the year, and it's taken a little bit of time for teams to work them out. Now, this is not necessarily do or die for Sanguine, but it's them starting to realize that people have started to work out their play style, who they play through, who their focal points are, and who their weak points potentially are, and where their areas of improvement need to be. I'm not trying to say that that means they're going to fall down the table, but this is the correction I would have expected in the market of SPL, so to speak, in terms of where I expect Sanguine to be right now. I don't think they're going to be every team week in, week out. I think there's going to be closer games. They are a mid-table team for me, but I do still see the potential for them to skyrocket to the top come end of the year if they can work through the issues of where teams have shown them they are struggling.
Well, Sanguine not the only team with a doubleheader this week. We've got a bunch of them, actually. Sanguine, Ghost, Radiance, PK, all have doubleheaders this week. Real quickly, MYFLIN, as a former player, how hard is it to play these two?
Everything down, which is plan A.
Play these two. Well, that's not
plan
going to
B
work out
is
so
the
well.
way.
Me and you'll continue. Finch doesn't know he's on air right now, but that's not a problem. We can continue on as normal. Where do you think these teams are going to go this week? I mean, we will have a little look at the predictions, I'm sure, to really see what's going on here. Where are you standing, Myth, on the predictions, honestly?
As far as predictions goes, I mean, the only one that's really got people confused from me is I'm always going for Obey. I have to keep going for Obey. I love these guys. I think they're going to play incredibly well as the season goes on. I mean, look, we got to talk about potential, Hindu, and they've certainly got it. And they've got tons of star players. Ducky's been consistently improving. Sino's decided to finally shelve those Warriors. He looks incredibly strong on these assassin picks. And even then, last week when we saw them performing, they were able to win out in the early game consistently against some pretty strong squads. If they're able to transfer into the mid game a lot better, I think they might actually find a Titan kill eventually.
That's fair. I can see where you're looking for the ups and downs, but Ryan's back now, so I'll shut up. Hooray!
Yeah, I totally heard everything you guys said, and it was very well put, and you're both very intelligent human beings, so thanks so much for holding down the fort for me with a little bit of technical issues. Sorry about that, fellas. But the big thing, though, I'm assuming you guys were talking about Ghost and Space Station at the end of the week, because these are two of the top teams at the SPL right now. What are you expecting from this matchup in particular? Because this is the one that I'm the most looking forward to this week.
Let you take it first, Myth. How do you feel about it?
Well, I really think it comes down to what type of Space Station are we going to see. If we see them decide to play that very patient play style where they're playing incredibly passive European-style Smite in the early game, that's going to be a direct counter to exactly what Ghost likes to do. They're looking to blow you out and then use that lead to get into Gold Fury, get into Pyromancer. If Space Station's just able to box them out and for the pre-level 10 and then transfer themselves to at least at an even state into the mid-game, I mean, my money's on Space Station every step of the way.
Well, Graham, we can see your predictions in just a moment, though. I'll let you talk through them as we get to the predictions actual segment. Though I do have to say, Hindu Man, doesn't it feel good at 83%? You, me, and Finch, the veterans of the scene.
Realistically, I let my percent drop intentionally just to make everyone else feel a little bit better about themselves, you know, and make it not look as scripted overall. Let's be honest here. I think the biggest takeaways for the week is me and Dave honestly going. I'm not surprised by Myth going Obey against Radiance of all teams, probably the stellar team out there. But EU United is a talking one for me. I think this is a make or break situation for EU United to get to the middle of the pack where I believe they should be sitting. But at the moment, they're at the tail end alongside Obey, and if they don't win this against Sanguine, which I think is doable for them realistically, it's not a shot at Sanguine, it's more about the potential of EU United here. If they can do that, I think we're looking pretty good for United, and we can start to look at them maybe climb the table ever so slightly.
Going to be a tough week for them for sure. Sanguine coming off that doubleheader loss. You know they're going to be hungry, but we've got to wait no longer for the SPL to begin. It's going to be Ghost versus PK to kick us off. Thanks so much for watching The Waiting Room, and we'll see you next week.